Have you ever found yourself just lying in bed, feeling absolutely exhausted right down to your bones, but you just can't sink into a deep, restorative sleep? You know the feeling. You're wired, you're tired, and your brain is scanning for threats that literally aren't even there. Well, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're uncovering the biological master key to deep recovery and sleep optimization. We're going to look at the exact mechanisms of your autonomic nervous system, explore how chronic stress alters your biology, and most importantly, talk about how you can manually reset your body's survival switches. Okay, let's dive into this. We almost always assume that if we just rationalize our stress or maybe practice a little positive thinking, we can overcome burnout or insomnia. But here's the catch. When your body is stuck in a chronic survival mode, cognitive coping alone fundamentally fails. Your body is running this deeply ingrained biological program designed to protect you from immediate physical danger, like, say, a predator. And when that system is highly active, the areas of your brain responsible for logic and reasoning, they literally take a back seat. You simply cannot logic a dysregulated nervous system into sleeping deeply. It just doesn't work that way. To understand exactly why, we really need to contrast top-down reasoning with bottom-up processing. Top-down coping relies on your conscious mind trying to command your body to relax. You're basically telling yourself, just calm down. But trauma and chronic stress are locked in what's called the core response network. Now, this network includes your subcortical brain, your limbic system, and your basic arousal pathways. And the thing is, it operates entirely on physical sensations, not language or logic. So, to change the state of this network, we absolutely have to use bottom-up somatic processing. We need to use the body's physical sensations to send a safety signal upwards, directly into the brain. Section 1. The window of tolerance, understanding your optimal arousal zone. So when we are in that optimal window, our body maintains physiological homeostasis. We recover, we process complex emotions, and we experience true restorative sleep. But here's what happens when chronic stress starts to accumulate. That window actually shrinks. And when stressors exceed your capacity, your nervous system gets pushed out of that window into one of two completely dysregulated states. The first is sympathetic hyperarousal. You know this as your classic fight or flight. This is those 2 a.m. racing thoughts, the hypervigilance, and that intense motor agitation. The second state is dorsal vagal hypoarousal. This one is a primitive freeze or collapse response. It manifests as severe brain fog, emotional numbness, and just heavy fatigue. You might be collapsed on the couch, but biologically speaking, you are not recovering. Section 2. The polyvagal ladder, mapping safety and threat.
And what's really interesting about this biological framework is how it explains our physical reactions to danger.
Dr. Stephen Porges mapped our body's reaction to danger into a biological framework called polyvagal theory, which you can basically think of as a ladder. At the very top is safety. Right in the middle is fight or flight mobilization. And down at the bottom is that freeze or collapse state. But how does your body actually know to move up or down this ladder? Well, it's governed by a fascinating process called neuroception. Neuroception is your nervous system's continuous subconscious radar. It constantly evaluates interoceptive cues from inside your body and exteroceptive cues from your environment. It detects threats and actually shifts your physiological state before your conscious brain even registers what is happening. So if your neuroception is altered by chronic stress, it will perceive a perfectly quiet bedroom at night as a dangerous environment, which entirely blocks the onset of sleep. Crazy, right? If we map these biological states out, you'll see that in the ventral vagal state, which is our safety zone, your heart rate is rested and your digestion is actively working. But look at the sympathetic state. Sympathetic activation intentionally shunts blood away from your digestive organs and pushes it right out toward your skeletal muscles. It elevates your heart rate, dilates your pupils. From an evolutionary perspective, you are preparing to sprint or fight for your life. So you can see immediately why being stuck in this state effectively blocks sleep, recovery, and metabolic repair. Your body thinks it's running from a tiger, not getting ready for bed. Section 3. The vagus nerve, the master switch. As the primary superhighway of your rest and digest system, the vagus nerve wanders all the way from your brainstem, down through your chest, and right into your gut. So, the crucial point is this. Between 80 and 90% of its fibers are sensory afferents. What does that mean? It means they are carrying information up from the body to the brain, not the other way around. If your gut is tense or your breathing is really shallow, those physical danger signals are being blasted directly up into your brainstem. This gut-to-brain feedback loop is exactly why somatic, body-based therapy is often far more effective for resetting the nervous system than just talking about your stress. Now, when that upward signal finally communicates safety, it activates what is known as the vagal brake. The vagal brake is your ventral vagal circuit's ability to rapidly modulate cardiac output. Think of it like a biological shock absorber. A strong vagal brake keeps you adaptable. It dynamically lowers your heart rate to maintain physiological calm, allowing you to seamlessly transition from a super stressful workday into a state of true rest, social engagement, and eventually deep sleep. But when trauma or chronic stress dampens this vagal tone, the brake fails, and your heart rate, it just stays locked in high gear. Section 4, Bottom-up Somatic Reprogramming. Let's move to and see how this builds into actionable protocols that manually signal safety to the brainstem. Since we know the nervous system listens to the body, we can use specific physical exercises to manually signal safety right to the brainstem. The absolute most potent, immediate tool you have is deep diaphragmatic breathing, specifically with an extended exhalation. Here's how it works. You inhale for 4 seconds, really allowing the belly to expand, and then exhale super slowly for 8 seconds. Extending that exhale optimizes a biological mechanism called respiratory sinus arrhythmia. That's just a scientific term for the natural deceleration of your heart rate during an exhalation. By forcing this deceleration, you immediately strengthen that vagal brake we talked about, pulling the body out of fight or flight and preparing the physiological ground for sleep. Beyond breathing, we actually have an entire toolkit of somatic tools for immediate relief. Splashing cold water on your face, that triggers the mammalian dive reflex, which rapidly drops your heart rate. Vocal cord humming physically vibrates your vocal cords, directly stimulating the vagal fibers that pass right through your throat. Then there's visual orienting, simply looking around the room to name colors and textures. This gives your nervous system real-time sensory evidence that your environment is in fact safe. You could also try a quick ear massage or a squeeze and release body scan. All of these act as powerful circuit breakers for a panicked nervous system. Now, for that deeper, stored physical tension, clinical protocols like TRE or trauma-releasing exercises are utilized. This process involves pre-fatiguing the leg muscles, lying on your back in a butterfly pose, and lifting your pelvis for about 60 seconds to activate involuntary neurogenic tremors in the legs and core. So why does literally shaking actually work? Well, it mimics the natural post-stress shaking we see in mammals in the wild. It discharges all that accumulated sympathetic energy and releases deep myofascial bracing, especially in the psoas muscle, which signals a profound systemic release of tension. Section 5. Measuring biological resilience, proving your recovery. Transitioning your nervous system from dysregulation to safety produces real, verifiable data, and this brilliantly illustrates the mathematics behind it. What we're talking about is the root mean square of successive differences, or RMSSD. It is the primary mathematical formula used to calculate heart rate variability, or HRV. Now, HRV is the ultimate index of your autonomic balance. It measures the tiny micro-fluctuations in time between your heartbeats. A higher HRV means your parasympathetic and sympathetic systems are engaged in this beautiful, dynamic, flexible dance, which is a massive sign of a highly resilient, deeply recovered system. If you want the actual biological receipts of your healing, these are the biomarkers to track over a 12-week somatic practice. First, AM cortisol reflects the tone of your HPA axis and your chronic stress load. Next, tracking your HRV proves the strengthening of your vagal brake over time. And finally, monitoring HSCRP reveals your levels of systemic inflammation, which is directly driven by nervous system dysregulation. Seeing these numbers improve is absolute proof that you are fundamentally rebuilding a resilient nervous system. You're not just experiencing some placebo effect, you are fundamentally changing your biology. Which brings us to a really profound final question. What actually changes when your body finally remembers how to feel safe? You see, regulating your nervous system isn't just a one-time event. It is the accumulation of small, daily somatic practices. Over weeks and months, as you rebuild your vagal tone, the changes become systemic. Your digestion improves, your emotional reactivity drops, your overall longevity increases, and when your head hits the pillow at night, your body seamlessly drops the vagal brake, guiding you straight into that deep, uninterrupted sleep you are biologically designed to experience.